Hi, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to JSGP Virtual Open House that we are hosting today for our students who have already registered for our undergraduate programs, BA Honors in Economics and BA Honors in Social Science and Policy. A special welcome to our parents who are joining us today to understand these two programs better. I would also like to welcome students and parents who are evaluating our programs and maybe are confused between economics and social science. We have an all-star lineup of faculty with us today who have very graciously taken time out of their busy schedule on a Sunday afternoon to be here with us. These are trying times. If we were in normal times, we would be traveling around the country to conduct this open houses in person. But due to the COVID situation, we have to do it online. I hope all of you are staying safe and staying well at your home. OP Jindal Global University and our admissions office and our faculty are all geared up to help you in making better decisions even when you are at home. I would like to introduce the faculty here today, led by our distinguished Dean and a Rhodes Scholar, Professor R. Sudarshan. Professor Sudarshan has years of experience in working in fantastic institutions. He has been he worked for 8 years with Ford Foundation. He has worked for the United Nations Development Program for a very long time in his career. He is an expert on social sciences, economics, public policy. We are very happy, and he is also the dean for our Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. Professor Sudarshan, if I may request you to pick it up from here and probably introduce other faculty also and put in a welcome for our parents and students who are joining us.
Okay, thank you very much, Ankur. This is a very special occasion, and I'm very, very privileged to welcome all of those who are interested in the two undergraduate programs of the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. There is something very distinct and unique about our programs, particularly the BA Honors in Economics, and the program we are about to start in August this year, which we are calling deliberately Social Science in the singular and Policy. I'll say a few words about these programs. Now, the BA Honors in Economics is a well-established program. As long as the discipline came into existence, the discipline of economics, there have been students studying undergraduate and postgraduate programs in the subject. I myself did my BA Honors in Economics from college in Bangalore University, and then went on to do MA in Economics from the Delhi School of Economics. So my initial love and long engagement for at least 8 years has been in economics. After that, I went on to, I got a Rhodes Scholarship, and I decided there's no point in doing further studies in economics because I'd got a very good education, I must say, in economics from the Delhi School, which had some very great teachers, and I felt I taught that subject rather well. So I took time in the scholarship that I had to study a year of philosophy, and then opted to do a master's in politics. After that, I got a research fellowship at St. John's College in Cambridge. So I moved from Oxford to Cambridge, and I got very interested in constitutional law and worked on judicial review of economic legislation. So that's my academic story. But the point of narrating that is that I've come to the realization that I spent far too many years in a university, and it's not necessary for anyone nowadays to do that. Sequentially learning economics and learning some philosophy and then some politics or political science, as it's called in some places, and law, which is a very important subject, particularly if you're interested in policy issues. So that was a rather lucky that had scholarships, and all these universities where studying was an enjoyable experience, and you kind of dragged it on. But it's not necessary to spend so many years in university. And that's one of the factors in the design of our undergraduate program in a university that is very interdisciplinary. Our university started with a law school, then it had added a business school, and then it has a school of international affairs, which has a program in global affairs, an undergraduate program in global affairs, and a postgraduate program for law, diplomacy, and business. Then we started the School of Government and Public Policy, and I came into as its dean upon leaving the United Nations. And we started with a master's program in public policy, because this was the first master's program in India of 2 years duration, not meant for mid-career IAS officers or mid-career professionals in corporations, but meant for students who have done an undergraduate degree. So in a way, that was trailblazing. We are very gratified with the fact that that program has now many imitators, and MA in public policy has spread to many other universities, including the national law schools in Delhi, in Bangalore, and other places. We decided then to start an undergraduate program in economics. Now, when we decided to do this, start an undergraduate program in economics, we already had the 2008 financial crisis, which affected many countries in the world. And there was a time when, Queen Elizabeth is supposed to have famously said, "Why didn't any economist tell us this is coming?" And indeed, I think there is some claim for Raghuram Rajan, who was the governor of the Central Bank of India, the Reserve Bank of India, was a professor at Chicago, who wrote a book where he warned that the way the architecture of the financial system in the world was set up, it was set up to crash, and he was mindful that that might happen, but he didn't actually say it's going to happen with some bad loans in a housing mortgage market in the United States to trigger this off. So economists had not quite anticipated it. And that's led to a lot of jokes about economists. People would say when economists claim to make predictions, they lend respectability to astrologers. So it's a kind of a moment where everyone in the discipline said, look, I mean, this is an old, well-established discipline. It's been developed on solid scientific grounds, and yet why is this happening? Now, the point is that the discipline, as any other discipline, is meant to explain phenomena. It's meant to make people understand why things are the way they are. Now, the prediction part is more risky or more difficult. In the natural sciences, for instance, if you did astronomy, you could fairly accurately predict the trajectory of a planet. What angle is the Earth's tilted in? The Earth is in fact tilted, and you can precisely say to what extent the Earth is tilted, and why is it that we have seasons, and when will the seasons come? When will there be an eclipse? These predictions will be accurate because they are scientific. And the fact is that when you make these predictions, the planets are not looking up what you've said about them. They're going about their own business. But human beings are a little different. So the moment you begin to say some things about human beings and how they will behave, the fact that the human beings and people learn, oh, this is what top economists are saying will happen in the stock market. This is what will happen to prices. this is what is going to happen to investment. The moment anybody makes or dares to make some such prediction, they are always on slippery ground, because those listening to those predictions may behave in ways that change the basis on which such predictions were arrived at. So the point I'm trying to make is that criticizing economists for not coming up with predictions is unfair, because economists, like other social sciences, deal with human beings, and human beings have a set of predictable behavior and a set of unpredictable things we could all do. I could raise my hand now and you couldn't have predicted it, right? So that's essentially an element of human freedom, that we are intrinsically unpredictable in certain respects. So we must understand that that's the limitation. So you cannot expect that there would be wonderful predictions. So what has happened, though, is though there were jokes made about economists after 2008, there's been a serious thinking about how the subject should be taught. What about its fundamental assumptions? Why is it that we kind of learn the subject somewhat theoretically, and then maybe we are neglecting the real world just outside us? So there have been concerns about the discipline, about how it should be taught after 2008. And a famous instance of that was when a large number of students walked out of the class of a very famous microeconomics teacher who teaching economics 101 at Harvard. They walked out of his class saying, all you're teaching us is elegant theory, and we don't see how it connects to the real world, and whether, if you're a minority person, you can get a job, or if you're African American, if you can get an education. These are the realities around us, and your economics is not helping us learn that. So that doesn't mean that the economics that was taught in Economics 101 was to be chucked out. It's in fact the product of a large amount of rigorous scientific thinking and development. Like every other discipline, knowledge in economics has been cumulative, has built upon knowledge that's gone before. But nonetheless, there was the question about, why don't you make the teaching of this subject more interesting, more pertinent to what we see around the world, to our lived experience? Because the theoretical economics is necessary and essential if you want to establish a reputation as an economist and contribute to the discipline yourself. That's important. But there's also the case that you just teaching out of a textbook the principles of economics, and well-known textbooks by good, elegant writers, isn't enough. And so we began and BA honors in economics with all this insight and background, that we should make our program very fresh and very refreshing to students. And one big advantage that we have is that I studied economics in the 70s and long past, but we have in the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy faculty who studied economics much later, and they are young, they are here. Vatsalya is here, Sudarshan is here. You can see there is a certain, and what they've studied is very, very up to date. So it's not, many places, I dare say, universities that are my alma mater, including Delhi University, have long-term teachers who teach out of textbooks and give notes, and students take it down and go away and write an exam and pass it and say they've done economics or history or political science or whatever. But the way we are dealing with this in this university is completely different and very fresh. So the other thing we did after this experience with economics, which was gratifying, for instance, we decided we will teach game theory in the very first semester, because much of what used to pass as microeconomics is now graspable using game theory. So we thought we'll begin with it too. Why not? And that experiment has proved to be successful. Students have enjoyed it, have got onto it. They have not been, frightened by some elementary mathematics that you need to use. All well. But we decided that we also needed to, because we are a policy school, and the thing about policy, basically just one line or two about policy. Policy is anything that is meant to change people's behavior for the betterment of people. Now, you could lay a policy in your house and say, you shall not watch television after 10 o'clock. Now, that's a household policy. It's meant to change behavior. Somebody may be tempted to watch TV beyond 10 o'clock, and you say as a policy, let's not do it. So government makes policies for the public good, for the good of the general public, and all policy is translated in the form of a law so that it can be enforced using the authority of the government and the state. So for policy, to make good policy, we need a good understanding of all of the knowledge that we have about human beings and how they relate to society, and how human beings impact their own society directly by what they do, and sometimes indirectly. Now, for instance, what has happened to the planet and climate change is a consequence of human behavior, but indirect. That is, human beings didn't intend to make a difference to the global Earth's temperature and its atmosphere, but it came about as a consequence of many things that they did, which they didn't intend to affect the Earth, but we now know it affects the Earth. So there is human beings affect society, the environment directly, indirectly. That is what social science is all about. It's about understanding human psychology. It's understanding human political behavior. It's understanding the role of culture. It's understanding the role of religion in people. The fact that top scientists will also have faith, which doesn't seem to quite fit with the scientific temper, but nonetheless, that is the reality of people. And human beings have prejudices. We are a segmented society, caste differences, all of that. Now, all of these factors have to be taken into account if you're going to make policy that's going to work. So for a public policy school, it's important that we train students, say in an important discipline like economics, because that pertains to a very large area of policy making that has to do with the economy. But we also wanted to start a new program, which we are calling social science, which we want to take the insights from multiple disciplines and see what practical consequences can follow by using the insights from these disciplines. So it's not a degree in economics, it's not a degree in political science, it's not a degree in psychology or in history, but it's a program of learning, the social science and policy, that draws insights from these disciplines, including economics, to see what sense do they make for policymakers. How is it that you can make better policy? Because if you neglect certain aspects, if you neglect, for instance, the fact that some people may have a fear about vaccinations and think this is bad. You now hear a lot about people who are vaccine hesitant or vaccine phobia. We now hear about them because of the coronavirus. But that's human behavior. Now, how are you to tackle this? If you're a policymaker and you wanted a vaccination program, you need to understand culture, background, modes of persuasion, communication, in order to get the result that you want. So that's why we are very, very excited about this new program, which we are beginning. So it's going to be an exciting adventure for us. But we have now a very well-established program in economics, which teaches the subject very differently from what most other places would do. I cannot speak for everyone, but having been a student in Delhi University and knowing that Delhi University, because it's such a large university with lots of committees and decision-making bodies, it's not very nimble, and changing the syllabus and changing it to bringing in some new elements takes a very long time. And therefore, there is an inertia, and people keep teaching the same old stuff from the same old textbooks. And that's exactly what we don't want to do in our university. We want to keep this fresh. So I'll now ask Vatsalya to say a little more about the BA Honors in Economics. Then I'll ask Subaran, who can expand a little bit. He's been thinking a lot about new ways of teaching macroeconomics. And then I'll ask Kaveri, who's also taught the economics students subjects that are related to economics, which they need to know. And then we'll conclude a round of what is it that we expect you to be learning. We'll then respond to your questions. And then we can go on to other things, such as what opportunities there are to study, what is opportunities there are for experiential learning, which is opportunities to get out of the campus and deal with real people in the villages and the communities around our university, understand their problems, and very importantly, understand how to evaluate projects, techniques of evaluation, techniques of research, qualitative and quantitative, and getting opportunities to actually apply the learning that comes in the classroom, in the campus, outside in the real world. So we'll explain some of those things because our university is very well placed to offer phenomenal opportunities of that kind, and also opportunities to learn from courses being taught in other schools, and wide range of elective subjects, and a very super faculty student ratio. We have one faculty on average for 10 students. It doesn't mean that the class is 10 students and one person is teaching it. It means that 10 students can have access to a faculty outside of the class hours. At a residential university, that's wonderful because you can, like us now, talking and communicating on a Sunday, you could do this when you are here on campus, and all our faculty would be available. So that's another plus point I wanted to say, the fact that we have, and not just faculty in the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, but faculty across the university, depending on your interest and subject, are all accessible. So now over to you, Vatsalya.
Thank you very much, Dean Sudarshan.
One announcement I want to make for the parents and students listening. At any point you have any question, you can just write it in the questions drop-down box. You will all have a chat box or a questions box. So please keep writing your questions, and we will come back to those questions after the faculty has stopped speaking. Okay, thank you. Professor Vatsalya, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Ankur. So while there are a couple of slides which will come up just to give you some visual perspective for what I'll be trying to communicate here. And picking up on what Dean Sudarshan had said, post the 2008 and 9 crisis, there was a lot of introspection within the discipline of economics, and there was a lot of thought given into how we can do better in trying to communicate the subject, particularly to young students who are interested in trying to better understand the world. And we've drawn on some of that, and we have introduced innovations of our own. And to give you a sense of how these things have been put in place, 3 of the major things that we learned over the last decade or so. The first was no subject exists in isolation, so there has to be a larger context within which economics or any other discipline exists. So to be able to better appreciate the ideas and insights emanating from any particular discipline, it's very important to have some sense of the larger context in which these ideas are being talked about. So our program introduced an entire sub-module spread across 3 years of our bachelor's program that covers things like history of economic thought. So how is it that economic thoughts and ideas have evolved over the centuries? We have introduced current concerns on the lines of the troubles that we are facing with the climate. And because a lot of economic policy is still a result of the decision making within the larger political space. So we are talking about things like the politics around the ideas of development. What do we mean by equity and fairness? Equity has become a very big question, pioneered by economists like Thomas Piketty. And because we do want our undergraduate students to have a deep appreciation of these topics and ideas, while they're also developing their skills in the larger toolkit of economics. In addition to this, there was the need felt that we need to, so while it is important to appreciate the analytical and deductive models of economics, there was an increased emphasis on the idea of empirical knowledge. You collect as much information about the world to be able to better understand how the world functions. And for that, we have 2 dedicated courses in econometrics, which is a part of the core of the curriculum. So we have econometrics 1 and econometrics 2. These 2 deal with 2 different types of data sets that are available. And students who are interested in this way of exploring the world around them, there are advanced courses in econometrics that are available to them as electives in the 3rd year. And the third most important aspect is the idea that it is insufficient that you learn how other great people have used the toolkit of economics to either come up with their own models or to draw inferences from data that is available out in the world. It is important for students to be able to learn how to use what they have learned in the theoretical sphere of the subject and be able to apply it either on things that they see in their everyday lives or to questions that they themselves are interested in addressing. So we have a separate submodule on being able to apply what we teach our students. Some of this is in the form of the larger questions of development that we've been facing as a civilization for a very long time. The other aspect of this particular course in applied economic analysis, which I can go into some detail because I'm the one who's taking this course this particular semester. So I would welcome questions on this, where essentially what we're trying to do is to pick up questions that one are very relevant. So for instance, our students have been learning some epidemiological modeling over the last couple of weeks, something that would traditionally be thought to be outside the sphere of economics. But given the toolkit that you develop as a young undergraduate student of economics, if you put your head to it, it's not that difficult to pick up. And as of this week, our students will be using data from Google Trends and using epidemiological models that they have developed to try and understand what we can expect over the couple of weeks. So the idea is that you pick up questions of relevance today and of interest to students and start applying the things that you have learned in class in all the other subjects that we cover in our program. And to be able to develop those skills before you leave, say, bachelor's program at a university and enter the job market. In addition to this course structure, which is something that we want all of our students to be absolutely familiar with, there's a bunch of additional measures or things that we have introduced as a part of our program to ensure that our students can do or can have a level of achievement that matches with their motivation and their skills. If you could just move on to the next slide. And here's a bunch of things that our program adds on to the course structure that it has. So for instance, one of the things that we learned over the last couple of years, that there are a lot of young students who are very interested in economics, but struggle with the basic vocabulary of the subject. There are many students who have not had the adequate preparation in high school because of lots of troubles that we have had with our high school education board. And to be able to address that problem and to ensure that they are ready to get as much as they can out of the program, we have started something called the Maths and Stats Bootcamp. The idea is to get everybody on a similar level of knowledge when it comes to mathematics and statistics by the time they start the program. So for many of the students who have already registered and enrolled into our program, you would have received materials over the last couple of weeks. They've already had a few doubt clearing sessions, and we plan to have more of them. The camp will extend into the first 2 weeks of our new session starting in August. In addition to training our students in the language of economics, as you spread out into the world, I mean, particularly these days because everybody's working from home, essentially while sitting in Sonipat or while sitting in Delhi, you could be working with people in Shan. And what that requires is not only for our students to be well trained in the language of economics, but also languages that are widely spoken all across the world. So we have a bunch of courses around them that enable our students to learn lots of languages, improve their writing skills, and particularly targeted at our students who are in their third year or about to finish their bachelor's program. We have 2 targeted components. The first one is to ensure that our students can perform well in domestic competitive exams. There's a lot of students who want to take exams that prepare them, that allow them to say take an MBA degree or to do a master's in economics someplace else. And because a lot of exams that are conducted in India around economics are very math heavy. So we have a bunch of courses as electives for our third year students in advanced mathematics that deals with rather complicated mathematical concepts around real analysis and topology to ensure that when our students leave the program, they have all the requisite skills to deal with any rigor or any level of rigor that any other program in the world has to offer. In addition to preparing our students for domestic competitive exams, we of course acknowledge that a lot of our students want to go abroad for no other reason to experience how universities abroad function. And to that end, because a lot of our faculty members have gone abroad ourselves after our bachelor's or our master's, there's a lot of advice that we can provide our students and do provide our students. And there's this whole process of reference letters, which is one of those special things that very few people really understand how it works, but once you have figured it out, can really help you with the admission process. So these are the additional things that we offer or that we have included to make sure that our program helps our students the best that they can, in addition to ensuring that the electives that we offer to our students in their third year. So the idea being that at the end of the second year, they have covered most of the core skills that we deem that any aspiring economist must have. And in the third year, we offer our students a whole bouquet of courses to choose from, where they can expand their skills in their chosen area of interest. So if, say, we have students who are more interested in pursuing quantitative skills, there are a bunch of courses that we offer in a wide variety of areas to ensure that they can develop their interests. There are a lot of students that we figured out that after having studied economics for 2 years are more interested in developing their qualitative research skills, and there are facilities for that. And because we are part of a large social science university with many other schools that offer many courses that could potentially interest our students, a lot of our students take courses from other schools, including things like programming in Python, a skill that has become of particular importance over the last couple of years. And because we have the flexibility, as our dean mentioned, that some of the public universities do not have, students who we think would benefit from taking master's level courses are also advised, with due caution, of course, that they can take certain courses at a level higher than a regular bachelor's, which of course also enhances their overall understanding of things that they're interested in. So this, I think, or at least I hope, gives you some sense of the objectives that we have for the program and how we have designed it with these objectives in mind, to try and ensure that our students, once they're done with the program, are not only trained to be good economists, but they also have a better understanding of things that lie around or lie at the periphery of the subject, in addition to being prepared for life after university. And in terms of how we're thinking about developing some of these courses even more, or talking about how we are thinking about adding more innovative features to some of the courses that we already have, Professor Sudarshan has a lot more to say for you.
Thank you very much, Vatsalya. Before I ask Sudarshan, can you just tell our audience where you studied and what made you interested in economics? And then I'll ask Sudarshan to begin with similar information to share with the audience before he goes on to elaborate a bit more on the curriculum.
Sure. So I have a bachelor's degree in economics from Delhi University. So our dean and I, so the place at which our dean did his master's from is the place that I did my bachelor's from. And from then on, I did a bunch of things. So I moved on to take up a corporate job. I realized that I'm more interested in having higher level toolkit at my disposal. So I did a master's from Tilburg University. I did a second research master's from Tilburg University and went on to do my PhD also from the same university. So Tilburg University is a place in the Netherlands that specializes in work in industrial organization and game theory, which is the area in which my research work is focused on. And as far as what interested me in economics, initially it was because it seemed to me that everybody around me took this subject very seriously. So anybody who would read the newspaper would be really serious when they would talk about the business page. So I figured that this must be something that is important. And over the years, I developed an interest in trying to figure out how is it that people make certain kinds of decisions and how we can put them together in the aggregate to be able to understand larger trends that the world takes. So a lot of my work today is actually the microeconomics of governance, which tries to figure out on the basis of how people think and react, what would be good policy measures to essentially make sure that people behave well or they're nice.
Thank you. Over to you, Sudarshan. Can you lead off with a personal observation about your interest in the subject, where you studied?
First of all, thanks, Professor Sudarshan, for a very nice introduction of our program. And thanks to Vachella for making us walk through the structure of the program, very exhaustive. And it has made my PPT almost redundant. So probably I'll be using only 1 or 2 slides of my PPT. But yeah, going back to the question of like why I chose by myself to study economics, like particularly in India, and more so probably coming from a Bengali family, we try to respect only 2 types of, let's say, profession. Either you become a doctor or you become an engineer. Okay, so the story was very simple for me. And the same story was running after me, like you have to sit for your JEE and the medical entrance exam. So I was preparing for the same. But while I was preparing, I was also going through these Economic Times articles. And at that point of time, Amartya Sen won the Nobel also at the same point during that period of time. And P. Chidambaram was our finance minister. So I used to follow their dialogues, and I was trying to follow up when Professor Sen won the Nobel Prize. But at the same time, that pressure was on, like you'll have to sit for your Jadavpur University in West Bengal is one of the renowned, so you have to go for that. And definitely I sat for that. And somehow I cracked through, and I was about to become a civil engineer. I didn't get a good rank, like electrical or electronics, but somehow I managed a seat in Jadavpur. But somehow the back of my mind was working, probably this is not the right place for me. At the end of the day, probably I'll not be a very good civil engineer to build the bridges and all. So better let me speak for myself. And then I had the courage to tell, like, okay, let me just give me a chance and let me pursue what I want. And I must thank my family, like they gave me a chance, they trust on me. And my journey with economics started way back in 1998. So I graduated from Calcutta University, and after completion of my graduation, I went to JNU, and I pursued my master's in international economics with specialization in world economics. Now, at that point of time, I was thinking, what next? Because the quest for let's say the hungriness or the fire under the belly for learning more economics, more applied concepts, I was thinking how to make myself go for PhD, the next step. Now, I was definitely sure, like pursuing a PhD by paying fees abroad is not going to be feasible. There is a huge budget constraint. So I started to prepare for my GRE exam, and while doing so, after my master's, I had a short stint in FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in their international trade department. And then for the next, after 6 or 7 months, I understood like I'm just writing letters to the ministries like for invitation and all. So I shifted my job to National Council of Applied Economic Research, where at least I got in touch with more, let's say, macro-related faculty who gave me recommendations later on. So after doing that, I got a scholarship from Louisiana State University, from where the Journal of Macroeconomics is actually published. So I went over there with my synopsis regarding, let's say, financial development and economic growth. And then it got changed a little bit, and later on I pursued in the foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and economic growth. And I started my teaching in the year of 2004, because in order to, let's say, sustain yourself, you have to do teaching assistantship. So way back in 2004, me and my advisor, we were also thinking like, probably you need to teach in a very different way, because these young, let's say, American students, you can lose them within 5 or 10 minutes. Either they are going to listen to you, or they are just going to give on their let's say Scantron, they are going to design A, B, C while they'll be answering. So I had to make sure that they are listening to. The listening part is very important, because often we get to see like they're sitting idle, they're with a blank look. What is going on? They don't care. They're thinking when this 40 minutes or 1 hour will get over, and that become a challenge. And of course, the challenge gives you the opportunity to further mold the subject in a way which is more, let's say, I will say, receivable for this current batch of students. And then when I completed my PhD and I joined Bowling Green State University in Ohio, I saw the same structure of same bunch of students, same similarity, texting, this and that. So as I moved on, then I worked with Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce, Dubai Chamber of Commerce, Abu Dhabi School of Management, and primarily I have been working in the area of macroeconomics throughout. So I'll definitely, as Professor Sudarshan suggested, I will definitely touch upon that part, like how we are thinking about changing to teach macroeconomics, because often we get to see like demand and supply is very easy to understand. Okay, demand is shifting this and that, but what happens when let's say central bank goes for open market operation? That just a couple of days back, it's a central bank of India has borrowed money. Now, what is the effect of that? So that was my journey, and then I landed up over here. And what I would, at this point, may I request Ankur at least to share one slide of mine. Ankur, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor Roy, I'm just putting it up now.
Right. Just before getting into that detail of, just go to the next slide. Vatsala has done a wonderful job of going through the, let's say, the intricacies of our program, but I'll just go over these 5 points, only 5 points, which are probably the program outcomes. And often we see like economics is being taught as an isolated subject. Now, being in a public policy school will definitely give you a tremendous advantage as a student, because as the first point clearly says, there is an interrelation between economy and society. Okay, so the interplay between economics and the society is often neglected in various schools. And as I said, like in my short journey or whatever little experience I have often seen like it's a department of economics as if it's working in isolation. And we do not, in certain occasions, I have seen like the integration doesn't take place. The integration doesn't take place well. So that is our first plus point, that I will definitely say that you'll be studying economics under the umbrella of public policy, and that gives an immense scope where you will really understand, let's say, the economic forces and how it actually gets translated into the society. And at the same point of time, always it is not necessary to think that a global solution. It is not necessary to think about a global solution, but yes, there are global economic problems, but you can take an approach, which I liked here at JSGP, that take a local approach, that there might be some local policy which can actually have a very huge impact on the global problem itself. Okay, and the third one is integrating various economic systems. Let's say, for example, that central bank takes an open market operation, or they go for an expansionary monetary policy. Now, when let's say they're taking an let's say an expansionary monetary policy, what is going to be the effect on the rate of interest? That's the direct market effect. But what is the effect, let's say, beyond that? There is foreign exchange market. There is going to be some spillover effect on the foreign exchange market. And the moment it hits the foreign exchange market, it's going to hit your export sector as well as import sector. So your trade balance might get a little bit distorted. So this whole connection, the entire model needs to be taught, rather than, okay, today we are going to study monetary policy only, and these are the tools A, B, C, D, and you are done. Well, we do not like to do the things like that way. We'll have to ensure that if there is any change in the equilibrium, let's say in the monetary market, or let's say let's say repo rate goes down, we do not have to just restrict ourselves by saying, okay, this is going to affect only this A. Well, no, that is not going to be the situation. It is going to have a large impact, not only on the economy, but again, going back to the first point, to the society itself. At the end of the day, all economic agents, whether you are a household, whether you are a banker, whether you are a business firm, whether you are a government, you are part of society. You just cannot ignore that part. And the fourth point, implications of decisions related to economic policy. Extremely important, because any economic policy you take, that's going to hit some or the other way to you, directly or indirectly. And there can be n number of examples we can come up with. Like 2 days back, let's say, when the government was borrowing the money from RBI. Now, at this point of our time, I can clearly see that economics are again macroeconomics specifically are getting divided into two subgroups. One group is going to talk about relax the fiscal deficit. There is no point sticking to the fiscal deficit. On the other side, they're saying, a couple of my own friends, and we have been debating, and that's the fun part of it. That's the fun part. You won't see two economists, very often you will see two economists are fighting on the same point. Unlike, let's say, physics or let's say chemistry, where you will set up the temperature, as Professor Sudarshan was very nicely explaining, that we are dealing with social animals like us. Who knows that I can raise the hand? That was the example. And exactly that's the point. And that is why, like, two economists will often fight on the same point. One may be saying A, another may be saying no, let's print money. So these are the things we need also take into account while we are offering the course. And the fifth point, which I like the most, is to respond to economic problem arising from society in general and the different units that interact therein. So most of the problems, let's say in the case of development economics, mostly you will see like the problems they are dealing with, let's say money lenders problem, a very high rate of interest they are offering for their money. So how we can solve that part, or let's say crop sharing, there is a free rider problem. So all these things are actually part of this whole subject economics. And again, I will just go over this after, like, before completion of these 5 points. I must say you will be blessed that as a student you are going to, let's say, study economics under the School of Public Policy, because the scope is immense. The scope is immense. And definitely, Ankur, can you go to the next slide, please? I know, like Vatsalya has already mentioned. Ankur, can you please go to the next slide? I guess there is some technical glitches. So I'll just, yeah, this is the one I was talking about. Like that, you just have a look on the pool of electives. On the one hand, I can see applied econometrics on the top, which is very quantitative in nature. And if I go to the last topic, it's health policy system and governance. Probably not that quantitative as applied econometrics itself is. So this clearly shows the range of, or the pool of electives you will be able to choose from. And I'm quite sure, like, you are not restricted to only these. As time passes by, we are definitely going to increase the list based on, let's say, students' demand and, let's say, if you think like a course is very important in this point of time, then they will definitely offer. And can you go to the next slide, Ankur? Because at the same point of time, as a student, you must know that you will not be restricted to only take electives from JSGP. Okay, so you can take electives from the other schools as well. Okay, so these are the electives so far they have been taken. Students from other JGU schools, their Professor Sudarshan has mentioned, we have School of Law, we have School of International Affairs, School of Business and Finance. So based on your interest, you can further choose your electives, right? So this was my first part of my, let's say, this talk, where I was going to the program objectives or program outcomes, which are fascinating again, because and these program outcomes are only possible since you are going to do your program under School of Public Policy. There are various schools who are offering through School of Businesses, but they are probably, if I may be wrong, but probably I will say that the approach or the view will be more narrow compared to when you are doing your honors program, that too in economics from a public policy school, because the scope is immense. Whether you want to go for further policy studies, whether you want to go for, let's say, as a think tanks, whether you want to pursue your study abroad, I guess like the views or the concepts which will be delivered in the class will be from a broader perspective rather than, let's say, a very narrow perspective of just firms are trying to maximize profit. That may not be the case. Now, the last part I will talk about teaching macroeconomics. I'll just spend another 5 or 6 minutes. Hopefully, I'm doing more or less in terms of time. So, see, macroeconomics, some people say like macroeconomics is very tough. Micro is okay, and macroeconomics is also very abstract at times. We are talking about some calibration, this and that. It doesn't happen like that way. Well, yes, I would definitely agree to both of them in a way that you can make any subject tough. If you're not taught in a proper way, even, let's say, micro can become tough. Even, let's say, a very basic course can become tough. I guess, like, as a teacher, or as an instructor, we have a better role to play. We have a long way to go. And that's where I will, whenever I enter a class, I will just say from my perspective, I'm quite sure, since we are in the same school, so probably we are all thinking to some extent in the same line, that we do think like it is not going to be a one-way traffic class. That I just keep on saying, and people will keep on receiving. Those days are gone. It has to be a two-way traffic. And at the same point of time, I must admit, I also learn a lot from my students. I also learn a lot, whether they're new examples, whether from their questions. And I must say, like, if I do not know the answer at that point of time, I just do not give up any fake answer. I'll say, I'll just get back to you. Let me give it a thought. That's an interesting question. So discussion is a very important part. It's a very important part. Whether you're in the first year of BA, second year, or let's say MA, the whole idea of discussion is very important. Second point is, various schools, they use in one shot, let's say HBR, or let's say Harvard Business Cases. Well, definitely that's a very good move. There is no dispute about that. But what if you take a newspaper article which was published on the very same day? This semester macroeconomics class starts at 9:30. So I take the liberty to read the Economic Times in the morning, and then I take the newspaper to the classroom and say, let's say ABC event has taken, and let them realize whatever we are doing in the class is actually happening out there in the world. This is what we discussed ABC, let's say 2 weeks back, and see exactly that is what is coming up. The government is going for expansionary monetary policy. They had to do this. Say, for example, I'm saying, or they are reducing the tariff barriers. There is no other way out. Or we have criticized a particular policy of raising the, let's say, tariff rates. So there are various policies which are coming out on a daily basis, if not in weekly basis. And these are the points of discussion which takes place in the class. And that makes the student feel like whatever math we are doing, whatever graphs which we are, let's say, covering in the class, they are actually happening right out there in the world. Maybe we do not see, but they can start to see once they are in the class. And for macro, I will say it is very essential that you do not only, let's say, show graphs, but you will have to take them to databases. Let's say we are going to take our students to, let's say, World Bank database. Let's say World Development Indicator. The target for my course was, unfortunately, due to this coronavirus, I had to change a little bit, but the objective was to take them to, let's say, the World Bank database, show them how to extract data, and then analyze their own, let's say, generate their own curves, own graphs, and then they analyze. However, that's also one part. And at the same time, we do also do what is known as role play. Let's say in my next week's class, what we are going to do is going to divide the class as a group of classical macroeconomists and the group of, let's say, Keynesian macroeconomists. Now, both of the group will try to solve one particular problem. And we will see like one bunch of people will come out with a solution which may not match up with the Keynesian view. Again, the same role play will take place, where I will ask a bunch of students to act as if you are a core fiscalist and not believing in monetary policy, and another bunch as that you are monetarist, you are the part of the central bank. Okay, so you will have to fight up your point, like, okay, this is the correct policy. And I guess like these are the things which excites the students, rather than if you just go in and make it a one-way traffic. And that is where I guess like JSGP is being pretty good. And I'm quite sure, as I said, since we are colleagues, I'm quite sure like we are doing some or the other with the same thing. We are speaking the same language. So I guess like I have done pretty much well in terms of time. This is the bit which I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sudarshan. Actually, I have to say to both of you, Vatsalya and Sudarshan, that I enjoyed listening to you. I mean, you know, you're my colleagues, and we are in the school, but I don't know about those in the audience, the prospective students who are going to join us, their parents. But I found this now that the two of you took to be quite fascinating, and also it was nice that you provided a personal account. Now I'd like to ask Kaveri to do the same, to say a little bit about herself. And Kaveri has been one of the group in the faculty who's played a prominent part in making the case for a program in social science and policy. I have to say that we had to make a case for this because we already have in our university a school for liberal arts and humanities. And now, by and large, there's around the world among young people a great interest in the liberal arts, particularly in India. And a number of universities have started liberal arts programs. Our university has, but so has Ashoka, there's Flame University and Symbiosis, all of them. And so liberal arts and humanities is a school where students do study psychology, economics, religion, arts, filmmaking, a range of subject, philosophy, mathematics. These are all considered as the sort of the classical liberal arts education that we offer. But we thought that, you know, so liberal arts is the foundation course for many liberal arts programs around the world is a course that is called the Great Books, where you just pick up the classics. You read Plato and his Republic. You read, you know, Bertrand Russell. You read John Stuart Mill. You know, any of the you may read Chinese philosopher Lao Tse, Confucius. You may read Kautilya. You know, so that's the kind of program that it is. So the thrust of a liberal arts program is to kind of develop critical thinking. Not that critical thinking is not needed in economics, it's needed in any branch of language, but to kind of specially focus on critical thinking and a range. So the emphasis there is range. And whereas we decided that we needed to train students, because we are a public policy school, who have a very solid foundation in the social sciences, but not social sciences differentiated into this morning it's economics, in the afternoon I'm studying politics, the next day I'm studying sociology. It isn't like that. We are calling it social science because in the end, you have natural science, which studies phenomena that don't have to do with people, and you have the social science, any social sciences dealing with people. So we wanted to devise a program where students then get the opportunity. Some students have made up their minds that they want to study or specialize in economics. Sudarshan told us how he got motivated to study economics after having got into engineering. So this is a time when we are not, you don't have to be certain and sure as to which discipline you want to do, but the kind of undergraduates we expect in our school in the new program, as much as in economics, is those who say knowledge must have application and it should be used. Now, it's certainly possible there are people who are interested in knowledge for knowledge's sake. They're not necessarily concerned about whether the knowledge they are dealing with has any practical consequences or will make life better for people. So a lot of knowledge in the world is cumulative and has developed in that way. You don't know when you develop knowledge what practical consequences it would have. So there are people who go and study a subject without knowing that it should have some practical application. They're studying it for knowledge as its own sake. It's cumulative. You're building on earlier knowledge, and who knows, at some point that knowledge may turn out to be enormously practical and useful, but you don't know that. But we wanted, so the liberal arts orientation in a way is to say there is this vast world of knowledge, and to develop the ability to learn and acquire knowledge, to learn a language, to learn about religions is all very interesting. And after that, you spend time in that, you think of where you might wish to go. Some of you may have already decided, like Sudarshan did, I want to study economics, or like I did, I decided to study economics. I decided I will not do the Indian Administrative Service exam and instead go into concentrate on studies, further studies. We make up our minds like that. But the BA Social Science and Policy is meant to lay the foundation and the groundwork for students to be able to grasp insights from a range of social sciences, insights from anthropology, sociology, culture, politics, psychology, history, economics, to be able to learn how to integrate insights so that they are not in silos. So not in this and this. And this is a point which Sudarshan also emphasized, as well as Vatsalya, that there is no isolated field knowledge in a way. Unfortunately, in a number of universities, in a number of departments, there does tend to get a kind of a silo mentality where people are narrowly saying, oh, I'm an economist, I will not talk to this person. No, they are. As when I was in Delhi School of Economics, we used to say those are commerce types, as if, it's a bit pejorative. The commerce types or the human geography types or the socio types. Delhi School had all these departments, right? We are economists. Now, that's unfortunate because we don't need young people, students, when they're initiating a course of studies seriously, to differentiate and to have these silos. So our program is meant to be interesting. So any of you who has not made up your mind about economics and is thought about liberal arts and humanities and says, okay, no, I'm a bit more practical in my orientation, then you must consider social science and policy. So I'll ask Kaveri to say a little bit about that, and with and also about her background, which is very interesting. And that's that kind of the people with interesting backgrounds make for a very interesting faculty and a great learning experience for our students. So over to you, Kaveri.
Thank you, Sudarshan. Thank you for that excellent introduction. I think it's important to understand why we have come out with this program, which is very distinct from the liberal arts and humanities program. So just very quickly, a basic, very quick introduction. I come from a lawyer's background. I have a family of lawyers. And so I thought that was a very natural thing to do. So I became a lawyer myself. I decided to study law. And then later on realized that I had a lot of interest in society, in the social world around me. I was very interested in human rights issues, so I went on to work with Indra Jaisingh in the Lawyers Collective, Women's Rights Initiatives, on a project on mental health and women's rights issues. And then after that, I had the opportunity of working with UNICEF. For some time, I went to Geneva at around this time. I worked with the UNICEF CIS office for about a couple of years, and then decided to stay back to do Masters in Development Studies at the Graduate Institute in Geneva. I got introduced. I began to work very closely with a professor who was an anthropologist. And then later on went on to do my PhD in development studies, which was funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation. So I've done a range of things, and actually I come from a very activist background. I've always believed that the knowledge that we get is meant to be used at some point of time. I'm not the philosopher type, so I'm not the kind of person who will just acquire knowledge and enjoy it, enjoy thinking about various things. I want I feel much more comfortable actually, knowing that I'm doing something, that I'm taking something that can be used at some point of time to help somebody. So, there are a lot of us, and probably there may be some of you as well, economists actually, form a very large part of the development organizations. Sudarshan himself has worked in the United Nations Development Program. You know very well what I'm talking about. I mean, economists more or less rule the roost in these development institutions, and obviously because of the kind of value they bring to the work that is done there. I myself have studied development studies, and I found a lot of limitations in development studies. It's a very, I found that it was very narrow in approach. It had development projects and development initiatives, and very often in isolation from, without any connection to the political context and the social context within countries. So this studies is pretty much a very narrow, and how.
Kaveri, if you switch off your video, because you are having a bandwidth problem. So switch off the video and
I'll do that.
And then you can intermittent.
I'll do that. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. So I began to, this notion that somehow if you want to do something outside in the world, you need to do development studies. I have over a period of time realized the limitations to development studies. I joined the JSGP in 2017. I've been teaching there since 2017. Actually, I'm one of the lucky faculty who's been able to also teach in the BA Eco program. And I've had a fantastic, time. I've really enjoyed teaching the BA Eco students. One of the subjects that I've taught them is economic anthropology, and another one is qualitative research methods. So when we sat down to think about a BA program, I was really, and me and of course a group of other faculty in the MAPP program, we were very, we were very convinced that we needed a program that would enable students to actually, go out there and make a difference in the world. but without necessarily being limited to certain disciplines and certain streams. So we, look at my own background. I mean, I went and studied law, and then later on went and did development studies. And when I was doing development studies, I felt it was so much more important for me to study sociology, because so much of that sociological context was not there in the development studies literature that I was looking at. So I realized that if you're having a program on social sciences, which is a far more applied, practical program which you can learn from and actually use out there in the world around you, you needed to have different disciplines coming together. So I'm just going to go through the academic course structure, very briefly introduce to you. If you look at it, there are, there are four streams. One is the policy stream, of course. The other one is the sociology stream. The other one is political science stream, and the economic streams. Having said this, thoroughly interdisciplinary, and therefore these subjects are not going to be approached in the standard way, and I must say very boring manner in which these topics are approached by regular sociology or political science teachers. With what Sudarshan also said, are going to be very deeply connected with the world around us, with actual problems and with the actual situations that we are undergoing, actual issues that we are undergoing in the world around us. So I think the fact that all of us come from international backgrounds, most of us have gone out there and come back to India after an international degree, is that we've also been exposed to different ways of teaching the subject, which is I must say in many ways far more meaningful and makes a lot more sense to the students. So all of these four different streams will be taught in a manner to be far more applied. They will connect to real world problems and look at real world solutions to the real world problems that we are looking at. So Ankur, can I request you to go to the next slide, to the next page, please? So this is, I mean, what I'm showing you now, the first page is there in the BA SSP brochure. The second page is the career options. I mean, here you can, you get a sense of the broad array of possibilities that a BA social sciences student can have. A student can actually use this BA program to prepare for the civil services examinations, to actually start in government projects, to work in different government projects, to be part of development and policy consulting, CSR, advocacy and rights-based initiatives, branding and marketing research, United Nations and intergovernmental developmental organizations, research and policy think tanks, NGOs, print and television media institutions, and many of our students obviously go on to do higher studies and academic research. So the objective is to be able to introduce you to these four different streams. And as I say this, I must say we are also thinking about adding other streams to this program. For instance, now we're thinking about including history as part of the social sciences and policy program, and it's still in discussion. We haven't yet finalized it, but the idea is that our students should come in with a very, very thorough knowledge base is to actually tackle existing social problems out there without being to several disciplines that can enable you to come out with creative solutions. Okay, so I'm going to stop with this, BA Social Sciences. I'll let the students, if there are questions, I'll be more than willing to answer. I want to now talk about a couple of other things. One is global opportunities. I am the Associate Dean for International Affairs at the JSGP, and my work has been to, to guide students in enabling them to obtain some sort of a global experience. This could be in the form of an exchange program. JSGP has a range of international partnerships with several other universities around the world. Just to give you a very brief, background, now we actually have a student who's preparing to go to LSE, London School of Economics, the next year on an exchange program. We've had in the past a student who has gone to Northwestern University, another student who opted to go to University of Toronto, and another brilliant partner that we have managed to have, recently, which is ICAM Mexico, which is one of the best economics universities, has one of the best economic departments in the world. So some of these opportunities are available, and I actually consistently work with the undergraduate students more than the postgraduate students. We have an international affairs office, so we have dedicated people to help students to find those global opportunities that they're looking at, and to see if we could, build partnerships and enable exchanges or study abroad opportunities. Apart from this, Jindal also has very vibrant international partnerships with universities abroad, including the top universities, Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge. We offer a range of summer school programs that are always open for students. Okay, so I think I will stop here. And just the last point is on research around the campus. I think, Sudarshan mentioned this. There are many, many opportunities that our students have to conduct research in and around the campus. Let me just give you an example, and this is based on the BA Economics program, trained in survey methods in quantitative research as well as in qualitative research. And we have had groups of students who have, gone out and worked with migrant communities. And you see migrant communities now in deep distress during the COVID situation. These migrant communities, obviously not now, but much earlier to the corona outbreak. And we've also got now a student group who has been able to muster sort of a partnership and funding arrangement with an institution in Delhi. So they've actually a BA Economics student group who's been able to get somebody to fund a research project to work with one of the slum groups in, close to the university in Sonipat. So there are a vast array of resources available for our students. And more than anything, I think I would just like to add this, is that we have a very strong mentoring program at JSGP. Faculty takes actually a good amount of personal interest in what students do. Vatsalya is really a very important part of the career program. He's been, coaching and guiding students on improving their experience, as well as ensuring that students also. We also work very with students to ensure that what they want to do after the economics program is more or less reflected in the courses they choose during the economics program. So we are consistently working with students on and off. The fact that we are a residential university, the fact that faculty is available on campus is a huge advantage. So it enables us to work much, much more closely with our students. So I'll just end here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kaveri. Can we see you again now?
Yes, I've turned on my webcam.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Ankur if there have been any questions. I know that it's a funny modality, face-to-face, you are motivated to respond to body language, to ask questions. Somebody has a question in their mind because you can see them. But in our very artificial situation now, I don't know if everyone's used the chat box. If you've got any questions.
Thank you, Professor Sudarshan. Yes, question chat box is full of questions. I think there are more than 20 questions as of now. So I'll try to bucket them into segments. But before I do that, my sincere gratitude to all four of you, Professor Sudarshan, Professor Vatsalya, Professor Roy, Professor Kaveri. It is a pleasure listening to you. And there are a lot of questions that our students ask us have been resolved today in the course of your conversation. So thank you so much, faculty. So I have the first bucket of questions which says, I think this is a very relevant question that a lot of students ask us. I don't have maths in grade 12. So will studying economics be difficult? Can I study economics? So if one of you can take this question, how does someone who doesn't have maths in grade 12 fit into any benefits or disadvantages?
Okay. Before I'll ask Vatsalya to answer that in more detail, but I just want to say that, you know, the maths that's used, when he put up the slide, he called it the vocabulary of economics. It's a language. Now, you know, when I was studying economics, there was a wonderful book that was published by Amartya Sen that was his PhD thesis on collective choice. Now, that book is remarkable because the chapter has what it needs to say in plain English, actually in elegant and plain English. And then it has a section which says the same thing in 2 or 3 pages, at the most 2 pages. The chapter is about 25 pages, right? So the same thing is said more elegantly, more economically, more crisply, more precisely in the language of mathematics. So mathematics that's used in economics is really an aid to more clarity and precision in thinking. So it's not mathematics per se, it's simply a language, but it's increasingly become, very few people now will take the trouble that Amartya Sen did of writing out in plain English what he needed to say, and then also showing that it could be stated in the form of mathematical equations. Most people now writing in the field of economics use mathematics. So in order to be literate in economics, you need to know the maths. You don't need to be a mathematician, but you need to understand that language and what it's saying. And you need to be able to differentiate where someone has done it beautifully and elegantly, and someone has done it somewhat sloppily and rather elaborately. So therefore, it's not, you know, if you've not done maths, it's like learning a language. You have not done French, you have not done Mandarin, you have not done Spanish. You can pick it up. So we would like students not to be uncomfortable and frightened of mathematics. We want students to be willing to learn the maths that's needed in economics, and we are prepared to teach the maths that's needed in economics. But I'll ask Vatsalya to elaborate a little more, and Suvaran as well.
Should I? I
Guess
guess I just finish it in quick words. Like
Yes.
in the language or in the math world, there is something is said something like this, like this is a necessary condition but not a sufficient one. So probably I will say, like, there are courses which are being offered which will take you to that mark, and I must also admit at the undergrad level, not going into very deep calculus. I will say first order differential and second order differential, you will learn within 2 or 3 weeks. And let's say some integrations and some matrix algebra. Probably that will take you a long way. And then you have 3 years time to learn more and more. And on top of it, I have seen like we have a math boot camp. If you want to do that, go for that as well. But I will not say like just because for the sake of thinking in a negative line, like I didn't do math and I give up the scope of teaching us, let's say learning such a rich subject like econ, I would rather not do that. So that's my take. I guess like Vatsal can say a few more words on that. But again, it's it's not a necessary, it's a necessary but not a sufficient condition to learn economics.
I hope I'm audible this time around. I think my microphone was turned off. And I think Dean Sudarshan and Professor Sudarshan have already addressed the question as best as it could be. I guess my response would be on very similar lines. So in short, do you require a previous education in mathematics to be able to study economics? Not necessarily. Is it going to be slightly more difficult for such students who probably haven't studied maths in high school? Yes, it is. And because we acknowledge this, and we also acknowledge that just because you made a choice in class 10 that you don't want to study mathematics in high school, does not mean that you should not be allowed to study economics at the university level. And to make sure that everybody is on the same page, so to speak, when we start our proper exploration of the vocabulary of economics, because essentially, as we said earlier, economics is the rather mathematics and statistics are the language of modern economics. And we, of course, want all our students to be conversant with them. And to be able to help them as much as we can, we have this setup of this mathematics and statistics bootcamp, where even students who haven't studied math in class 7th and 12th will be sent material along with regular help via doubt clearing sessions before the session starts. Make sure that they're already at a level by the time they start the program, that they can start a more rigorous course in mathematics that is required. So as Professor Sudarshan mentioned, calculus is a very important part of economics, and we want to make sure that you have gotten to the stage of sets, algebra, an idea of functions, that when we do start with calculus at the university level, when the program starts, all of our students are able to follow. So just a quick recap. Is it a hindrance? Yes. Will it be slightly more difficult? Yes. Does that mean that you cannot study economics? Absolutely not. Some of the best economists, so Stephen Lewitt became a very famous economist in recent years, and he wrote the very popular book, Freakonomics. And if you actually read the book, you realize that he barely had done any mathematics until grad school, but he was able to catch up. So if you're really interested in the subject matter, we are there to help you out with the tools that are required to be able to understand the subject matter better.
Can I just say something here, Sudarshan?
Yes, do.
One of the students who graduated, one of the topper students who graduated last year did not have a maths background, and he did very well. He topped the BA Eco batch.
Just to say, as a point of information, it so happens that calculus. It was during the plague that Isaac Newton was sent down from Cambridge. He couldn't live in the university campus, and he had to go away. And it is the time that he was at home and not in university that he discovered calculus. It was also done by Leibniz independently in another place. But it's really, when you think about it, it's about understanding what small changes, differences make, small changes, right? Called delta. And much of economics is about concept of the margin. What happens at the very end, at the smallest addition, smallest increase in price. So therefore, it lends itself very nicely, calculus, to a great deal of what we do in economics. And it's not, very difficult. There are some people who kind of develop a block, and we try to nudge you out of that. And once you get the drift of it, you'll find that it's not forbidding at all. So no one who has, when I took up economics honors, I had not done maths in school, and there was a new program in the honors program in Bangalore University, which was rather mathematical. But then, as Vatsalya said, with a little help, I mean, it was not so well organized as we have done it. We are better organized. In my time, there were just one or two kind teachers who took some students who had not done maths before and held their hand and helped them to be more confident about the maths that's needed. But we are organized, and so it shouldn't be a problem for anyone who hasn't done maths but is keen to do economics. But then, if you wish to postpone your thinking about whether you want to get into economics straight away, of course, you also have the BA Social Science and Policy program to think about, where not, it won't be math heavy as an honors program in economics has necessarily got to be, because it's now become the language of the subject.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other?
you, Professor. Yes. So the next questions are around our research focus, the research opportunities that are available for our undergraduate students during their program. How is the program research intensive? So that is something around research they want to understand. We can't hear you.
No, Vatsalya, will you?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Research. Kaveri already alluded to some of the research that our students do, particularly what we like to think of as experiential learning and courses in research methods and their applications. But you might wish to elaborate a bit more on research.
Right. So there are two ways of going about it. Of course, we know that there are students who are extraordinarily interested in research and therefore eventually want to be able to start off on research of their own. And there are some students of that kind, and these are students who receive a lot of help. As Kaveri mentioned, if they're sufficiently motivated, they can even get funding from outside agencies to be able to fund their work. But in addition to such very, very motivated students, there are a lot of students who want to get an experience of research rather than starting off on their own. So part of it is that because there are so many active researchers on campus, and not just in our school, but across the 7 schools that the university has, that a lot of professors routinely need students to work as RAs. And a lot of our students are already doing it. There are students who are more interested in field work, so they join research work of the kind that requires them to go outside the university, collect certain kinds of data, meet with certain kinds of people. There are students of the kind who have been helping me recently, for instance, who are more interested in their secondary data collections. I had a bunch of students who have been looking into particular kinds of data that comes on the online court portal. So thankfully, the judiciary in India has decided to put up a lot of its case-related information online. So there are 2 students in the current bachelor's program who are helping me collect that data, and I know that there are others who are helping other professors. So one, there's a lot of scope. If you're sufficiently motivated, you can get in touch with professors who are usually looking for different kinds of RAs. Second, if you are motivated enough to start your own research work, there's ample support available for it. Within the economics program, essentially the nodal course will potentially become the applied economic analysis course, which essentially puts students in a position at the end of the second year to try and come up with research questions that they're interested in. And once you have gotten to a stage where you have come up with your own research question and started within a course setting to try addressing it with the toolkit that you already have, you probably have more of an interest in pushing further with it, while also having 1 year still left on campus. So, I mean, there are these multiple avenues when it comes to opportunities for research.
Yeah, no, just to add to that, the university has a policy for student stipends. Students who assist faculty in teaching, who are called teaching assistants, and students who assist faculty in their research are eligible to get a stipend ranging from 5,000 rupees to 10,000 rupees. Now, a month actually. So if some faculty has got a research project funded by the university or externally and want some work done on that project, then the amount can be 10,000 rupees per month to the student, usually during times when they are not learning courses in the inter-semester breaks, intensive work. But even during the semester, if students provide some research assistance, the faculty to the dean for a stipend, which can add to your scholarship, or if you don't have a scholarship, would be useful to earn. And this is a very generous scheme, and not many universities have this. So we follow a simple rule of thumb. If you get a fee waiver, then what you can earn by way of teaching assistantship will not be at the top end, will not be 10,000 rupees. It's more likely to be 5,000 rupees. But if you don't have any financial support or a scholarship, and you provide this kind of assistance to faculty, you can get up to 10,000 rupees. And this is working very well. And a number of students get their first, taste of what it is to be working or doing some research is by this means. It's part of the regular learning that happens on the campus.
Thank you, Professor Sudarshan. The next questions are around, our alumni, our history of BA Honors Economics program students abroad. So parents want to know what kind of universities that they have gone abroad to for higher studies, what kind of jobs that they have gotten into, any internships that you can highlight. So something around careers through the BA Honors Economics program.
Over to you.
Yes, actually, the last batch that graduated actually last year, we've had a good number of students who've gone to universities in the US. One of them actually, if I'm right, please correct me, I might be wrong here, but one of them actually made it to Oxford. Was it Oxford? One of the students?
Some of them, in addition to that, we had a bunch of people who had gone on to Boston and Pennsylvania, King's College, including your alma mater. Actually, yes. Somebody who had gone to the
Many went to the Graduate Institute in Geneva.
Yes, so Samhita actually got a full scholarship at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies. We've had actually one student who has gone in for the LAMP fellowship. So one student has done that. So actually the trajectory is that most of the students prefer to apply for higher education abroad. And we've got a good number of students in excellent universities, primarily in the US last year, except for Samhita, who went to Switzerland.
Okay.
Very. We have
some
at the Graduate Institute.
If I could add on.
No, no, I just wanted to say that,
yes.
for just to make it clear that for employment, for any job, you need a master's degree now. It's only, it's possible in some exceptional cases where, someone who's done BA honors in economics chooses to go off and into journalism, say. There could be opportunities in journalism because there are not too many journalists who understand economics well enough to communicate what economic policies are. So there is a dearth and a shortage of journalists in our country who understand economics and policy related to economics. So there could be, television and newspaper companies that will be prepared to hire any one of our graduates because they have this mix of economics as taught in a policy school and value that. However, I would advise all students who complete their undergraduate studies to do a postgraduate degree, because that has become the minimum for any employment. Now, if you want to do an internship, say in the United Nations, which is interesting, you should be enrolled in a master's program. You must have completed your undergraduate, but you cannot say, I've completed my undergraduate, can I do an internship in the UN? The UN will say, are you enrolled in a master's program? And if you're enrolled in the master's program, you can get an internship in the United Nations. You can also join the United Nations, do some work with the United Nations volunteers, but the minimum is a postgraduate degree. So all those now planning to do an undergraduate program in economics or in social science and policy in our school, I would advise you to think about what postgraduate program you wish to pursue. There are many options within our university, outside our university, the whole wide world. But I would say, instead of thinking about jobs or what do I do if I take a break year, you could have some fun and adventures in a break year. I wouldn't discourage someone who wants to do that. But eventually, it's a good idea to be in a program, at least enroll in one to learn more.
Sudarshan, can I say something? Or maybe Vatsalya has something to say.
No.
Please go ahead.
First.
Yeah. So generally, I mean, the trend has been that students apply immediately after they finish. Obviously, before they finish, they have applied. And most of the students who get some sort of partial scholarship or full scholarship, they go in for higher studies. This is the trend that we have seen. And there are cases where may not have gotten a scholarship or may not be able to finance their education. In those cases, what they do is they do a backup plan, which is they apply for the Gandhi Fellowship or the Lamb Fellowship to give them some amount of work experience that will enable them to then later on, again after a year, apply for scholarship. So that has been the general trajectory of BA Economics students.
Just in case, some of our audience may not know what is LAMP. So that's a fellowship that's been set up by an institution that does research support for legislators, for parliamentarians. And so a LAMP fellow is someone who is assigned to assist and work with a member of parliament. And obviously, when the PRS, which is the institution that offers the fellowship, is looking for people to give the fellowship to, they give a certain priority to graduates from the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, because the people they would be working with, which is members of parliament, are involved in public policy. And likewise, the Gandhi Fellowship, and I don't know if this program is still continuing. There used to be a Prime Minister's Rural Development Fellowship program that's managed by TISS, and a number of our students have, in the earlier years, got that. So this is open to both undergraduates who complete their BA degree. It's also open to those who've just completed their MA degree.
Can I also just add one thing that, for the Lamb Fellowship as well as the Gandhi Fellowship, we have been training our students. So for instance, for the interviews, last year we trained, 2 students for the interviews. Both of them, one of them got through and went on to the fellowship, and the other one got a scholarship abroad, so she decided against it. This year again, we had one student who applied for the fellowship and was once again trained by us. So we do a lot of that work as well to, to kind of prepare our students well for interviews, and also in their documentation, in the policy examples that they're required to submit to all of this. We help them some of that material. We give them some comments, some amount of guidance to enable them to have a little bit of an edge over other students applying for these fellowships.
Okay, Ankur, what next?
So the next question that is there is,
Well, we can't hear you. Ankur. We
Right, so until we wait for Ankur, I'll just add on to something that you and Kaveri have already mentioned. In terms of the breadth of options that are available, so both in terms of internships, our students have gone to large corporate houses like Royal Dutch Shell, large oil firm, to a large telecom firm like Vodafone, to consultancy like EY, government think tanks like Niti Aayog. In terms of internships, our students have had a broad variety of options. I know a student who had joined a very interesting startup last semester. It's called the Little Black Book, which is an initiative to collate and disseminate information about important cultural events happening in the large cities of India. And this particular student was very interested in event management, and she went out and got an internship and had a ball for 2 months. And the same student took up an internship at HDFC Financial Services the next semester. So you can, it just goes to show the kind of opportunities that are available. And this also shows in the kind of programs that our students have gone on to after the bachelor program. So you would expect traditionally that an undergraduate goes on to do a master's in economics. But as more and more opportunities have opened up, and particularly because of the broad-based nature of some of our programs, our students have gone on to do a master's in financial mathematics. Another one has gone on to do a program in behavioral and decision sciences. Of course, there are some that have gone into economics and economic policy. There are some that have gone into management. So one of the benefits of being at a program that offers you the ability to develop skills in, say, the qualitative area while giving you a rigorous training in quantitative skills is that it opens up practically the entire domain outside of probably engineering and medical studies, and that shows up in the kind of choices that our students have been able to make.
Right. Have we got Ankur back with any more questions?
Doesn't seem to be the case.
Or Asim?
So hi, this is Pankaj. If I can have the opportunity of addressing the question.
Yeah, do that.
So there's a student by the name Sandeep Saha, and the question is, given the multidisciplinary nature of the public policy course, how do you think public finance can play an important role for developing better policy decisions and the impact of blockchain technology in public financing policy making?
Okay. All right. I'll have to ask one of the economists here to answer that. But public finance is a subject that in our school has been taught by Dr. Rajiv, who worked in the Indian Economic Service for many years and was his last post in government was advisor to Mr. Pranab Mukherjee when he was finance minister. And he teaches public finance. And so that's a prominent part of the curriculum, public finance. Now, I'm not too sure about what to say about blockchain, but maybe Vatsalya can connect to that and answer.
So yeah, blockchain, and there's been a lot of conversation around blockchain. Blockchain is the underlying technology that allows people to get into anonymous contracts and essentially increases the level of trust that different parties to a single contract can have. It is usually thought of as cryptocurrency, but that's one application of blockchain technology, and it can be applied in a variety of many dimensions. But the fundamental idea of blockchain is to be able to improve trust between different stakeholders of a contract. So if I sign a contract with, say, a supplier, I am constantly under the threat of something what the economists call the hold-up problem. where because this person has told me that he'll give me, say, a bunch of masks on the 11th of May, I'm concerned that just in case this person does not give it to me on the 11th of May, then my business will be stuck. And there's a lot of work to show that the degree of trust that members of an economy share with each other has a very strong causal impact on the level of economic activity that can be sustained within that economy. Can we implement blockchain on a large scale to forcibly increase the level of trust in society? Nobody has done it. And as Dean mentioned earlier, prediction can be tricky. And as an economist, I would like to shy away from it, particularly because it's been pointed out how dangerous it can be. But the idea is that it should be able to increase the trust that people have in contracts. How relevant will be for large-scale development problems, we don't know yet because it hasn't been tried at a large-scale level. There are firms that are trying it. There's a bunch of firms that have come up with something called smart contracts that have blockchain technology that allow people, say somebody who is a small supplier of solar power to a small consumer of solar power, and ensure that that both can rely upon each other. But large-scale implementations have not been carried out anywhere, except cryptocurrencies, which have a whole bunch of problems of their own. I think that would be a quick review of how I think this fits in to the larger sense of the economy.
Sudarshan, you want to add to that? Hear you. Sudarshan, we can't hear you. You have an audio problem. Ankur, I think we are all now reaching.
Maybe Sudarshan is muted.
Yeah.
Is he?
No,
is
he's
he,
not
is
muted.
not.
He's unmuted. He's not muted. I can see he's very well not muted. So, Subran, please try audio section in the software. Just see that your audio is clicked to computer audio and not audio, and just toggle between these two. We can't hear you.
Am I audible now?
No, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to definitely say, like, this is a very interesting question. Whoever asked, I think some Saha, or it's a very interesting question because he linked up the whole idea of blockchain with the public finance. And probably what Vatsalya has already touched upon, like there is a question of trust. And that part probably whoever the potential student is thinking from that perspective that there is a possibility of mistrust, or from the other angle, yes, there is a chance of corruption. And we are all aware, like in most of the developing nations in public finance, there is a huge amount of corruption involved. But yes, definitely it will be a very interesting work if somebody really, let's say, employs the whole idea of blockchain in public finance, mostly in developing countries. If that is being done, that will achieve a lot, I'll say. I just wanted to add this point to that point.
Okay, thank you. Ankur, next question.
Yeah, sorry, I got lost due to power failure here. I don't know if you have questions related to social science. There are a couple of questions from students who want to know how social science is different from global affairs and political science, and where does it fit in? What should a student choose?
Okay.
Why should one
let me, Kaveri and I will tackle this. As I explained, global affairs is a program that's meant to lay the foundations for students to go on to doing international relations. So the idea is that you can, since the world is now so globalized and so many things that happen within a country or within a locality are affected by decisions made by international organizations, other countries. It's time for undergraduate studies to take what's happening in the big wide world seriously and to study global affairs. So that's the rationale and the logic for our School of International Affairs to start a BA in Global Affairs. The intention is that the students who do that will go on to, they've got a preliminary interest in international institutions, international politics, and would go on to doing further studies in that area. Now, we in the policy school are concerned rather more about policies at different levels within the country. Now, obviously, international institutions affect national policies. What the IMF or the World Bank, or the fact that we sign treaties and are members of the United Nations and the different agencies, we have the obligations, we are part of the ILO. Obviously, international institutions affect policy, national policy, domestic policy, but nonetheless, the thrust in our school is on policy. So just as BA Global Affairs is orienting its students to getting a better grasp of international affairs, our aim in BA Social Science and Policy is to get our students to be well prepared to get a good handle on policy making at different levels within the country. Policy making, in the end, also internationally, but primarily policy making at the local level, at the state level, at the national level. And we are a federal country with distribution of powers between the three tiers of government, and policies can be made at one level and not in the other. So get a good grasp of all that. And I must also emphasize that in the process of laying this foundation in BA Social Science and Policy, we also get our students to get a good understanding of the constitutional framework of the country, so that they understand what are the, and this is something, for instance, currently in the COVID crisis, there's people are wondering what is it that can be done at the local level, what should be done at the state level, or should everything be done at the central level. The people who are commenting that too much is done at the Prime Minister's level and more needs to be done at other levels. So to get a grasp of all of these things, so I'd say differentiating global affairs from social science and policy is global affairs is leading to an understanding of international relations. Our program is leading to a good grasp of policy issues in the country. Kaveri?
Yeah, I'd just like to add maybe, to look at it in terms of stakeholders. A global affairs program is focused on how countries relate to each other, what kind of relationships they maintain, what kind of histories they've had in the past, what kind of bilateral relationships, what kind of trade negotiations they have with each other, a variety of both political, social, economic relations between countries. But what we're looking at in the social sciences and public policy program is really the relationship between citizen and state. And when we say citizen, we also mean communities, we mean societies. And that relationship between the government and people who are governed, that is citizens, is really primarily the focus of our program. Of course, obviously, this does not, government is not just influenced by what happens within the country and how citizens respond to policies, but governments are also influenced by what happens globally from outside. So those elements will also be part of our program, but they will not necessarily be the only part of the program. The main emphasis would be on government and on society.
So thank you, Professor Sudarshan. Thank you. I think we are just about to run out of time. There are last couple of questions that I think we should be taking. There are some general questions around, again, coming to social science program. They are asking if they can also study economics. In what will be the element of economics in social science program? Can somebody who has an interest in economics also look at social science policy program?
Yeah, no, yes, certainly. I have to say that, as I said, our journey, this university, and it's a young university, is one of discovery, learning, and an adventure. Now, but then it's not all that new. Now, let's take someone who's considered to be a person with whom economics begins, so to speak, Adam Smith. When Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, he also wrote another important book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Adam Smith was not described as an economist. It is, at that time, people were doing what was described broadly as natural philosophy. Adam Smith did philosophy. He thought about human behavior. He was interested in sociology. He was interested in what the Presbyterian Church does in Scotland. He famously said the reason why we need the law and the law of contract is because people are not good Presbyterians. If they were good Presbyterians, they would keep their word and they would keep their promise, and there would be no need for a law of contract. So what I'm trying to say is that here you take a character or a thinker like Smith, and he's differentiated into political, economic, social, religion, and so on. At the time that he wrote and thought about it, there was a more holistic understanding. Over time, we've become more specialized, and specialization has had the advantage of making major advances in different disciplines faster than they might otherwise have occurred. But nonetheless, at some point, you have to say, you just can't be so narrowly specialized that you only understand, it's like the 6 blind men and the elephant. Somebody goes and grasps the trunk and says, oh, the elephant is like a tree. And somebody grasps the tail and says the elephant is like a snake. Now, for their perception and their reality of their perception and their feeling, what they say is maybe true, but if you want a more holistic understanding of the relationship between human beings, society, and how they govern themselves, you need some foundation that is social sciences and policy. Now, in that, of course, economics is very important. So I'm just trying to say, if you, as a student, you've made up your mind, you have a passion or a desire to study economics, as Sudarshan did or I did when we finished high school, then go ahead and join the BA Honors Economics program, and you'll do very well by that. But if you haven't thought about that, as you've not decided that you want to specialize only in economics, then a very attractive and important course, which will lay the foundations and give you a wide range of choices for further specialization, is the program which we are calling Social Science and Policy.
Can I add to that, Sudarshan?
Yes,
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
please.
Yeah.
The manner in which we have conceptualized this is keeping in mind the fact that, at the undergraduate level, it's very difficult for students to actually make a choice on what really fires them up and what really motivates them. It's a little bit, I also remember when I did my undergraduation, like I said, I did law thinking that I wanted to be a lawyer. And it turns out that I didn't really want to be a lawyer, though I was interested in law. So I think the manner in which the course has been developed is to be able to give you a wide, not really a very wide, but a few choices, a few streams to sort of experiment, to try out. And then if you feel at some point of time that you want to specialize in this, and this is really the core subject that interests you, then deepen that specialization. If you're interested in policy or economics, take a few more extra electives in economics or in policy or in sociology or politics, depending on what your interests are. knowing very well that at the undergraduate level, it's very hard to make these choices. But we still want to, develop these streams with the integrity that they demand. It's not that students do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but whatever they do it in a very thorough manner to be able to use that as a bouncing pad to then deepen at a later point of time.
Yeah, just to add, one of the most famous courses in the world, which has produced a number of leaders, many prime ministers of the United Kingdom and presidents in the United States, is the Oxford PPE. That is philosophy, politics, economics. These are the three subjects. So you do the Oxford PPE in your first year, you do all three, philosophy, politics, economics. And in your second year, you could do two. And in your third year, you can choose to do just the one and drop the others. But we decided that this PPE is not quite what we want to follow. We are more interested in the relevance of all insights from different social sciences for policy. So we are not focused only on economics, philosophy, and politics. We have a broader range than that. Oxford has been a snooty university. It didn't think sociology is important, whereas great advances have been made in sociology in Oxford itself, which is not included in the PPE curriculum. But so we wanted that emphasis in an understanding of a discipline that's, has a lot of insights to offer for policy making. So the disciplines that we are focusing on in this program are, is there any insight and knowledge from this discipline that is going to be very important for policymakers to have a grasp of? That's been the rationale for the design of that program.
Thank you, Professor Sudarshan. We have one last question before we close this, and this is related to the current scenario, and this is directed to you. People have asked a couple of questions. How do you see COVID situation affecting teaching methods? And do you see there is, what is the university, what are we doing to, mitigate the effects of COVID on students?
All right. Now, COVID has forced upon us online teaching. Now, there are some universities and some faculty within universities who've always been comfortable with online teaching and connecting to their students online, even though there's no COVID, because, in the inter-semester break, when the students are away, it's a good idea to link up, and we used Skype for such conversations. Now we have other software that we keep using. This is in a way come to stay. So I think whether, whatever happens with COVID, this technology is going to enrich the teaching experience and the learning experience for students. Because, in a residential university, of course, we are all living together and so on. But in the inter-semester breaks, when students are away doing internships or doing a research project somewhere, it hasn't naturally occurred to all of us that this is a good way to connect and to keep in touch with the student, even though they are not physically present. Now, all of us are now got used to this. We are talking to you in this modality. So this will continue. I think the answer to COVID, of course, depends on the discovery of a vaccine. Otherwise, I don't think that you can remain locked down and hide yourself and say that you're going to, isolate yourself. You'll be a Robinson Crusoe on a desert island, or that's unrealistic. So whether the virus will remain, will be around. Some people will get infected, but the rate at which people get infected is going down, has gone down in many countries. So we don't have to have that extent of fear that, just brushing aside a person in a shop or something like that is going to endanger you. Those fears will gradually diminish. And I think, and the vaccine is very, very likely to be produced, because this is not, the scientists understand the virus. More is known about the composition and the genome of this virus than any other. And that only means that it's only a matter of time before we get vaccinations. I mean, we are all, no one is worried about smallpox any longer because we have the vaccination. Children don't risk getting measles and dying of it because there's vaccination. So that's what's going to happen to COVID. But the teaching methods, I think it's done us a lot of good. So what, of course, individual face-to-face teaching is a rich experience. There's no substitute for it, but this technology complements it phenomenally. So hybrid teaching, which is a mix of both face-to-face classroom interactions, one-on-one interactions by way of mentoring, which Kaveri emphasized, and connecting through a computer and helping the student learn is the future I foresee.
Thank you, Professor Sudarshan. So there are some questions regarding for admissions office, which I'll be taking quickly. What is the batch size for economics program? We are looking at 120 students to be recruited. When will the campus reopen? We are following the University Grants Commission guidelines, Government of India, which is the September 1. We have to open the session for the fresh incoming class, and August 1 for the current students. So we are following all the instructions by Government of India. What is the scholarship policy? See, scholarship policy, we do have a lot of merit come means scholarship available. I don't want to get into details of that, but definitely we will be reaching out to you over email and set up a WhatsApp counseling session. But there are scholarships opportunities available for our students on merit come means basis. So scholarships, the admission process, the JSAT exam. So if you are following our emails, you'll be happy to know that the JSAT has gone online. You don't need to go anywhere, and you can give the JSAT from the comfort of your home. So that's another plus point that we have added in our admission process. Our complete admission process is online for both BA Honors Economics program and BA Honors Social Science and Policy program. Both the programs, you don't have to go anywhere, no couriers, nothing. So I think that has answered the questions regarding admission process. How many seats have been filled? We have almost completed admissions for 70% of our seats. So I'll recommend students to finish their applications as fast as possible. Our deadline for applications is 30th of June, but I'll not recommend you to wait till the deadline, because seats are filling up fast, and we'll want to get your seat booked as soon as possible. So thank you. There are some questions that we are not able to take because of paucity of time, but I will get back to you on email.
Ankur,
Yeah,
can I
Professor
just
Kaveri.
We frequently have students writing to us directly as faculty, and we very often have long telephone conversations with both students as well as parents on several questions. So if there are students who have questions on the BE Economics program, they can contact Vatsalya and Subaran. If there are students who have questions on the BA SSP program, they can contact me, Sudarshan, as well as any of the other, in fact, also other faculty, Swagato, Bhuvana. So that is also something that we generally do. We generally have students or parents calling us up and talking to us. We are very happy to take.
Thank you, Professor Kaveri.
Do write us a mail, and we'll send you our telephone numbers, and then you can call us back.
I think we are blessed as admissions team to have Professor Sudarshan and you around, because you're all available, accessible to us at a drop of a WhatsApp message. So we as is always forward those requests to you, Professor Vatsalya, Professor Sudarshan. I think that's another aspect of OP Jindal Global University that shows that our faculty is accessible available to students even before you have stepped into our campus. So definitely you can reach out, students, you can reach out to the faculty that are available today, and also there are wonderful faculty that could not make it to the webinar today, but are available to answer your questions and anxieties regarding the program. So thank you. On that note, I'll say goodbye to all our attendees and the wonderful panel that was there. It was a great experience listening to your stories and understanding from where you have done your graduation from and how did you come to economics. So it was an eye-opener for me to know the story of all of you. I'm humbled and grateful that you guys took time for us and our students. And I hope we can do it again in near future. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
खत्म हो गया ये